What's up guys, I'm Holly. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm glad you found this video and I hope you get something out of it. Today I'm covering how I got ready for my first 100-mile run in October of 2020. Now when I first signed up for that race, I remember Googling everything under the sun to make sure I was ready, to make sure I was gonna finish. So what I'm doing in this video is covering every little bit that you'd need to know so that you're ready and that you finish your first 100-mile run. I'm actually starting this video with probably the most important section, which is these 4 categories I want you to keep in mind throughout your entire training period. When things fall off or get a little wonky throughout the year, I want you to come back to these 4 areas. Number 1 is going to be that your training needs to be sustainable. I signed up for my race 10 months before I was going to run it, which meant that I needed to pick something, a plan that I knew was going to last through a whole lot of ups and downs. It's inevitable that we're going to have those peaks and valleys because that's how life goes. Little aches and pains, mental blocks, times where you believe there's no way you're going to be able to finish this thing, times where you're really motivated, etc. So you don't want to ever get too into it that you burn yourself out too early. So I want to make sure that you guys first and foremost make sure you're on a training plan and schedule that you know you can sustain. That for most of you will not look like 7 days a week of running. In fact, I highly suggest not running 7 days a week leading up to this race. Point number 2 is that real life is and should be still going on throughout your training. It's a common misconception that you have to just put everything on the back burner in order to finish strong with a big race like this, especially if you've never done anything close to 100 miles. The reality is that we don't want to lose a year of our life just to this race. We're going to look back and wish we had been there for birthday parties, family reunions, big work projects, or big work opportunities we would have taken. Know that you can do it all as long as you mentally trust yourself to get through it and get your work done. I'll get more into this later and I'll talk about how you can set up goals throughout the year to make sure you're on track with your training. But I want you to know you can do it all and you don't need to make as big of sacrifices as some people might lead you to believe. Third category is going to be logistics. I did not realize initially how much research I was going to have to do on my gear and on my timing of everything on race day. You want to get to that race day knowing everything's in place, the thinking is taken out, the crew and the pacers know exactly what to expect and how to keep you on track. So that takes a lot of prior research. I'm going to get into all the details today, but remember, a big portion of a 100-mile race is planning ahead. The final category to consider in preparing for something this tough is your mind. How are you going to sharpen and strengthen your mind across your entire training period to make sure that there are no surprises come race day? Every single person who I asked for advice leading up to this race told me my mind is definitely going to give up before my body does. They said it's going to happen. It doesn't matter how athletic you are, and it's what you do with those low moments that get you through the race or not. Now I'm going to break down each of those categories so you guys don't miss a single detail and you feel really knowledgeable on the subject of this 100-mile run. First things first, let's just get into that physical training piece. What do you need to do to make sure your body is fully ready to handle 100 miles? I know I'm probably talking to a wide variety of you guys. Some of you have run ultras before. Maybe some of you haven't even run a marathon yet, so you're just kind of dipping your toe in the water, finding out what needs to be done. This is what I'll say. If your training is balanced, and that means couple runs a week and a couple strength sessions a week with adequate rest and good body maintenance, you're going to be just fine. You do not need to approach this thing from a mileage standpoint. I have to get a certain number of miles in per week. Yes, there's an element of that, but if you're starting from there, all the other small pieces fall to the wayside. And what happens is our direct focus on the mileage gets us hurt really early on. Pretty much see that all the time. So I want to tell you guys right now, balance and a good well-rounded training plan to start is where you want to go from, and then we can build that mileage in. Now when I'm gearing up for a long race, I like to run at least 3 times a week, and I like to put these runs in different categories. One would be more focused on speed, so it's going to be shorter, maybe an interval run, tempo, I could be on a track, but I'm really focused on solid form, quick turnover with my feet, that cadence, and making sure that I'm moving well at a higher speed. That's also going to help with my cardiovascular performance. Second thing I'm going to hit is absolutely hills. I might do this on some treadmill workouts. I might go find a big hill outside, but I'm going to do hill repeats where I'm moving quickly up the hill and slowly up the hill. When I'm moving slowly up a hill, I really like to find something long enough where I can be going uphill for 5, even 10 minutes at a time, forcing myself to create a strategy of a walk, run, situation, or moving slow enough and consistent enough that I'm able to run for several minutes at a time uphill. I don't care what kind of course you have, that hill training is just crucial to making sure your breathing's right, your heart's working well, and you've got that good form going for you. Hips forward, glutes really strong, your calves know what to do when they get tired. Our third category, of course, is going to be the long run. This is where we really focus on that mileage, building it in a strategic way to get our bodies fully ready to know what it feels like to have to move one foot in front of the other when we're tired, when we're sore, and when we don't think we can keep going. So as I get closer to the race, I'll add a fourth run day. So I'm talking within 3-4 months of the race, I'll add a fourth run day to my week usually to have compound kind of back-to-back running days where I'll do something long 2 back-to-back days. That second day you start out, you are not feeling good, but you're doing it anyway. That's a really big part of training and getting the body ready. I might do 15 miles the first day, 20 the second, or reverse that. Now for me, anything past that 20-mile mark on any one day, I would kind of put in the category of racing as preparation. So if you've never done a long race before, you've never done an ultra, you've never been out on the trails for several hours, in a race environment, I would highly suggest doing at least one, if not more, before leading up. To give you an idea, I had done 4 50Ks and 2 50-milers in my life prior to even signing up for that 100. I had also done countless marathons, but I wasn't really even considering doing 100 anytime soon. So that was all just kind of things that I had under my belt, but you don't need to have that under your belt. You need to just know what to expect on race day. So if you've never been out there for a long period of time, I highly recommend signing up for at least a 50K or a 50-miler. If you want to do 100K, totally fine. My thought process there was kind of, dang, if I go do 100K and it feels good and I finish that easily, I almost feel like it was a wasted effort and I should have just gone for 100 miles that day. That was just my mentality because I felt like it was close enough from the mental perspective. At that point, 60 plus miles, your body's already feeling, broken down in a lot of ways similar to the 100-miler. So if you could have gotten through 100 miles that day, it's kind of like, did you need to do that? Everyone has different opinions here, but you don't need to obsess and hit every distance before gearing up. Just know at least what it feels like to be out there for over 7 hours, I would say, grinding through those hills, descents and everything, so you know what to expect come race day. A couple other physical things to consider in your training. Number one being, make sure you know what it feels like to run at all times of day. A really nice way to prepare for that is to actually do that Goggins challenge 4x4x48. I can link it here. I kind of talk about my process with that. It's a great way to just run when you're tired, run in the middle of the night, run first thing in the morning as that sun's coming up. It gives you that burst of energy. This is going to help you be really familiar for all those times you're going to be running during the 100-mile run. And the final 2 pieces here to consider in the physical category are going to be getting that strength work in and getting that mobility and stretching work in. Your body is your vehicle, and if we don't take care of it, it's not going to last through those months of training and certainly not through that race. You want to make sure your glutes, hips, hamstrings, calves, and upper body and core are strong for you to last through the fatigue. You are going to break down, that form's going to fall apart, but the extra layer of defense here is that muscle build. You do not need to bulk up, but you do need to have a rock solid foundation for all this training volume. 2 times a week is plenty. You don't need to do more than that, but make sure it's nice and focused on what matters. Get those lunges in, those squats, push-ups, maybe some burpees, sit-ups, planks, all that stuff to really stabilize you and keep you really moving well with a little bit of extra layer of muscle, and that's really going to get you through the race. I promise you that. If you need ideas, there's lots on my channel and I'll be covering more as well, but you want to make sure each individual leg is really supportive of your running. With the mobility and the stretching, quick foam rolling session, quick stretch, warm-ups and cool downs are really vital. They don't need to be long, but the more that you kind of break down and look at things throughout your training, the sooner you'll see things coming and it won't be this huge catastrophe of, a pulled hamstring or a big stress fracture. You're going to know these things are coming because you're going to look and be conscientious throughout your training. Next, I want to break down the mental aspect of my training, how I got my mind ready for something this big. When I signed up for that race and the moments on, I was just so obsessed with it through my whole training cycle. I don't like using the word obsessed, but what I really did was just try to bring that race into different parts of my daily life. It felt like it was always with me. It felt like it was part of me by the time I got to that race day. And I think that's a big reason I was always gonna finish, or always knew I was gonna finish. Also find people to be inspired by. I know for me, David Goggins and Courtney Dauwalter are kind of these pillars that I always listen to, always watch, podcasts, videos, reading things, quotes from them mid-race when they've had huge, fallbacks and all that kind of stuff. You need to get inspired from people that you resonate with. This might not be, the people winning the race. It might be someone in your family or a friend that you've watched go through some tough stuff. And that might be what gets you going. But whatever it is, spend a lot of time on that content. I loved reading David Goggins' book. The Joe Rogan episodes with David Goggins, I would listen to countless times through my training. And I just can't recommend enough, sticking with the people that you already find inspiring. Here are 2 mental strategies I used. One, on short runs, I would do kind of this daydreaming exercise where I would spend a few minutes in each of my runs thinking about, oh my gosh, if that 100-mile run went absolutely perfect, what would that look like? And I picture it just being perfect day, body feels awesome, I don't feel like I need breaks, everything's sitting well in my stomach, my favorite people in the world are around me, that kind of thing. Just really going to that place of like, what if everything went right? If you hit that at least once a week, you're gonna really, really have a place to go to when things get tough on race day. The second thing I recommend doing is anytime the number 100 comes up in your training, really small example would be if I'm in a strength workout and I'm doing double unders, the jump rope, and I have 100 that I have to do. As I'm going through those, I'm thinking about ticking off each number and what that's gonna feel like, to match it to miles getting knocked off during a 100-mile run. It's a small thing, but it really helps you wrap your head around the, critical moments through 100 miles, 20, 40, 60, the halfway point at 50, all that stuff, really getting obsessed with what it feels like to get through 0 to 100. And one final piece to consider here on the mental side is that, we're runners, yes, but we're humans first. And so when things are going on in your life that might not be favorable, you're going through a tough time personally, or your friends or family are not, in a good place, I want you guys to remember that this run can be for something much bigger than yourself. For me personally, my mom was, battling stage 4 cancer through my training and through my run. And I could have let it ruin me and completely derail my training and just say, screw this isn't the time. Instead, I decided to run for the larger cause. Do this for the strength of my family as a symbol of fighting on and getting through something so difficult. Because the reality is that we've chosen to do this 100-mile race. We're healthy enough to train for it, and that's a huge blessing in itself. So if you can add an element here of running for a larger cause outside of yourself, I highly recommend doing it, and being really appreciative of where you are. Last thing I want to talk about here is the logistics, how you're going to make sure you have everything gear-wise ready to go for your race, because that was such a big part of my research, and I'm going to hopefully take a lot of the thinking out for you right now. First and foremost, you need to know what you're comfortable running in for a long period of time. Most of this research is going to happen on your long runs during your training cycle. Knowing what wicks away sweat, what keeps you warm enough, cold enough. You're gonna have all different temperatures you're running through in a 24-hour, 30-hour period, so you're gonna need to be prepared. With your feet, that was one of my biggest concerns because I struggle with blisters, but even those who don't should be prepared to get some. So what I want you guys to do is make sure you've got the tape situation figured out, what kind of tape, how to tape your feet, the right socks, the right shoes, and if you're gonna be switching throughout, how you're gonna maintain dry feet throughout. All kinds of stuff to consider there, but I'm gonna link my best resources, as I said, and some videos of mine I've already done. You're gonna see exactly what I did. But those are huge things to make sure you've got really planned out ahead of time. On the nutrition hydration front, you're gonna need to expect that your appetite is going to change throughout. And by the end, it's very likely that getting anything down is gonna feel like a task. So what you need to do there is pick different things to try running with so that you have different categories to move through. That was one of the best pieces of advice I got leading up, was that you need to have kind of different areas of nutrition that you're comfortable going to. Salty, sweet, gels and goos, moving into real food, moving into just liquids with calories. There are so many different things you can eat, but you want to know what sits well and where you can rotate through, because chancing it on race day is absolutely not the move. A lot of you guys probably already know that, but I promise you, you're going to want to know a lot of different things that you're comfortable eating while running before you do it. By the end, you might not even want to be eating. That's what happened to me in my last few miles, but when I get to the crew pacer portion of this video, you're gonna see why they're so important. With that hydration, electrolytes are crucial. You're gonna be sweating for such a long period of time that yes, the water is important, but so is the electrolyte. Find something good. There's actually a great brand I just found. I think it's LMNT. I'll link that down below. These great packets. They're very salty, but it's a lot lower sugar than some of the other things. There's also Noon tablets, which are good. You know, a lot of people like Liquid IV at this point. It's a little too sugary for me. And there's also Tailwind, which is such a great resource for calories as well as those electrolytes. And the last two pieces of training gear that you're gonna wanna consider is your training vest, that hydration vest, which you're gonna test out all on your long runs through the training cycle. You're gonna be so comfortable in your training vest, you could practically sleep in it. Try a few different ones out. I know a lot of running stores will let you try them out and then bring them back if you don't like them. Find something light, find something with a lot of pockets that doesn't bounce around and fits you well. That is a really important piece to a good race. The second thing, and it should also hold at least 1.5 liters of water in my opinion. The second thing here is your headlamp, and you're gonna wanna make sure this headlamp doesn't feel like a big monstrosity on your head. You're gonna be needing it for a lot of your race, you know, the whole time it's dark out, and you don't want it bouncing around. I got even a little nauseous. Mine was a little heavy, and the bouncing made me just not feel good. So really get that dialed in, and again, that comes into that part of training at different hours of the day, so you again know what to expect. Guys, I'm gonna leave you with one final piece of advice, and this is really important. Your crew and your pacers matter. Getting through that really tough day comes down to who you surround yourself with. Yes, it's up to you to get through it physically, but on the logistics side, you need people there who know what the plan is, because you're gonna be very tired, very out of it at points, and they're gonna be the ones who keep you on track, make you eat when you don't want to, make you change when you don't want to, switch out your shoes when they know that you need to have them switched. All of that stuff is really important because you have a plan in the beginning, but your mind is gonna be such mush halfway through, 3/4 through, that these are the people who keep you on track. They're there for a reason. You usually can't pick up pacers till the second half of a race, or at least when it gets dark. And when you pick them up, they make all the difference. So make sure these are people who have run with you before, or at least know you well enough to know what to say. With mine, I had really specific rules of, if you hear me say this, or you hear me say I want to quit, here's what you're allowed to say back to me. Or here's a strategy that I know will work in keeping me moving. When it comes to your crew, they have your plan dialed in. We have the nutrition categories we talked about. You know, they know what you look like when you're fatigued. They know what you look like when you're starving or where you ate too much, if you need to throw up, something like that. These people really make sure that you feel cared for during something so hard. And so make sure that you've got that crew and the pacers really dialed in and ready to go. I feel so grateful that I get to say I have now run 100 miles, and I really hope you guys get to say the same thing one day. If you have other questions or things I didn't cover in this video, ask me down below in the comments. And lucky for you, I covered my entire 100-mile run in this video over here. Check it out, and I will see you guys another day. Have a good one.